there is an event that is happening today in the state of Mississippi. It's the Public Safety Summit. We've got a couple of guests in to discuss that now. Tindell is Commissioner of Public Safety, and the Attorney General, Lynn Fitch, joins us both this morning. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning, Richard.
Hey, good morning, Richard. Great to see you.
Good to see you as well. Appreciate you joining me this morning. So, Commissioner Tindell, let's start with you. The Public Safety Summit. What are we doing here?
Well, this was something that we came up with. I guess this is our third annual summit, and the Attorney General and I, about 3 years ago, just started talking about the different public safety initiatives and summits that we have in our state. And, you know, the police chiefs get together, the sheriffs get together, the prosecutors get together, firefighters get together, EMS gets together, but we never bring them together in one venue for fellowship, for learning, for training, for leadership discussions, and to talk about issues that affect the entire public safety sector. So we got together, and something that we do very often is collaborate, and our teams, we got two great teams, and when they come together, they can really put together something special. And so that's what this Public Safety Summit is about. This is our third annual one, and so we've got national speakers that have come in the last 3 years to talk about leadership in public safety, to talk about recruiting in public safety, to talk about ethics in public safety, all host of issues. And then we have breakout sessions where we talk about issues affecting Mississippi public safety, legislation that might be needed, just a whole array of issues that we can cover, bringing the various public safety sectors together in Mississippi. And I think it's been a tremendous success. And if you look at our enrollment, it went from just about 200 the first year to over 500, close to 600 this year. So it really has become a major event here in central Mississippi, and one that I know I'm very proud of, and wouldn't be possible without the leadership of Attorney General Lynn Fitch and what her and her team bring to the table as well.
Thank you.
I know both of.
It's been amazing to work together, Richard, with the commissioner and his team. It's been a vision, and it's all come together. Again, having all of these law enforcement officers, first responders, prosecutors together, talking about the issues, talking about how we can be proactive. And again, so many of these sessions are cutting edge, bringing these resources and tools to our law enforcement to help them be prepared for their jobs.
Attorney General Lynn Fitch, when we last spoke, you were in Arizona. You were headed to visit the border. And one of the things that I asked you about, and I'd love for you and Commissioner Tindell to talk about this a little bit as well, the working relationship between Department of Public Safety and the Attorney General's office, because these are two entities that have to work together and work together a lot. How do you make that work, and what is that relationship like?
Well, it's been great. Certainly, Commissioner Tindell is an amazing leader. He's got a tremendous team. I am very blessed. I have an amazing team as well. And we see that as we're stronger and united, we make a lot more progress. Again, we're charged with protecting all Mississippians. We're charged with their security and their safety. So as we work together, we understand what the issues are. And we work so well, our two groups, but also with our federal partners, our other state and local partners, because as we do operations together, we see that issues that are on the horizon. What are we going to do? How are we going to be proactive? So again, it's been an amazing situation to work together. We're continuing to do that. We collaborate all the time about potential things that are happening in our state. Again, whether it's potential illegal immigrants in our state, whether it's escaped inmates in our state, whatever the case might be, certainly we address together human trafficking. That's certainly an issue that we see in the state of Mississippi, but we have embraced that and gone after these traffickers and gone after rescuing these individuals. Together we work so closely on the fentanyl, the drugs being pushed across into our state, across the border, and they're here in 48 hours. Again, working together in every area that we can to protect all Mississippians.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you this, and I think one of the things that makes this partnership so great, and the reality is I think it's the best it's been in decades. If you look back, the Attorney General's office and the Department of Public Safety haven't always worked as well together as we've been doing. And I think it goes back to what Ronald Reagan said, and if you're not worried about taking credit for something, there's no limit as to what you can accomplish. And between these two divisions, no one's worried about taking credit. We're just worried about a safer Mississippi, whether it's human trafficking, getting fentanyl off our streets, child pornography, all these things that affect our communities and our state and the crime. We're not worried about taking credit. We just want to get the bad guys off the street, get them out of our state, and enforce the laws of the state of Mississippi. And when we do it, we do it with a servant's heart, and as does our entire team. And so I think the results speak for themselves when you look at the good things going on in our state when it comes to public safety.
You know, in both your case, Commissioner Tindell, and Attorney General Fitch's case as well, there are a lot of people and a lot of entities that kind of fall under your umbrella. And I think when we think of state agencies, we think of them as, okay, an umbrella for the entire state of Mississippi, but so many of the issues that we have are local issues. And I think specifically about Greenville, who is in the last few days had a couple of young people who have been shot. And we see law enforcement kind of pleading with the community, hey, we've got to do better. We've got to put an end to some of the gang issues and some of the gun violence. How do you go about helping at the local level, even though you're not necessarily on the ground every single day in every single local community?
Well, certainly we're working together with our local partners. We see that as an issue. There are far too many of our young people that are engaged in crime that lose their lives, that have been recruited by these gangs. In fact, that's one of our topics today. Again, how we can rally together. We have the FBI SAC, Rob Efcock, and he's going to be talking about that today. Unfortunately, we have entirely too many gangs in our state and our country. But again, how do we address that from a state level? How do we support our local law enforcement again, and how do we eradicate these gangs? Again, too many lives are lost. We see too many young people. We've got to stop and help them get their lives back on track. We certainly don't want to continue to see them. But these gangs recruit, and these young people feel that they are caught and they have no way out. And so, again, we've got to help change the culture of the communities and, again, help these young people as they are moving forward in their lives.
And if you look at the initiatives and the task force that the Attorney General Office has led and been a part of, just like the Department of Public Safety has led or been a part of, one of the things Governor Reeves asked that I do is reach out to local departments and foster those relationships. So I know, we go to the Chiefs Association meeting, we go to the Sheriff's Association meeting, we talk about the things that we need and they need, and then we develop those relationships so that if they have a problem going on, then we can send resources there, and along with the Attorney General and the federal government agencies, FBI, ATF, DEA, and we can all work together on these task force models. And if you think about Operation Unified in Jackson, of which both our agencies were a part of, that took the federal law enforcement agencies, the local law enforcement agencies, Hinds County SO and the city of Jackson, as well as Pearl and others were involved, and our state law enforcement agencies. And the number of drugs and illegal firearms and other things that we got off our street trying to attack these gangs, it makes a big difference. And just last week, Colonel Keith Davis met with Chief Wade over at JPD. They said, hey, we want to do a saturation this weekend. And we had law enforcement everywhere within the city of Jackson working together. There was no major crimes that night. There was no murders. And that was a big deal. But it shows you what happens when we work together and we can saturate an area and go after the bad guys.
With Commissioner Tindell and General Lynn Fitch, the Public Safety Summit, third annual happening. We're going to continue the conversation on the other side of the break. The specific topics, how do you avoid making some gathering? All in conferences where we walk away, we're like, well, that was a waste of time. That would have been a whole lot better in the office as opposed to sitting around a boardroom. How do you avoid that? And then also a little bit more about how significant gang activity is in the state of Mississippi. We know that it's something that has been glorified in pop culture, whether you're talking about red bandanas or blue bandanas or more recently Tren de Aragua and MS-13. How significant is it in Mississippi, and what is happening specifically to control and try to eradicate some of those issues? We'll get to all of that I think that's a lot on the other side of this break. It's Mornings with Richard Cross. Sean Tindell, Lynn Fitch are my guests. We're on SuperTalk Mississippi. We're back with you right after this. Welcome again to Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. We're glad to be with you. Commissioner Sean Tindell from the Department of Public Safety and Attorney General Lynn Fitch are my guests this morning. We've got the Public Safety Summit that is happening today in central Mississippi, and I laid it out there before the break. We've all been to, or most of us have been to conferences where you're like, what a waste of time that was. Gotten so much more done just by being in the office. How do you avoid that being the case for an event this large where you're bringing in public safety officials from all over the state of Mississippi, you're bringing speakers in from all over the country to make sure that this is not something where people walk away and go, I wish I had just stayed at work, and instead they walk away with, okay, that was absolutely worth my time, and I've got some action items that I'm taking home with me.
Well, we've been very fortunate. Our teams have worked together, and we have been able to secure nationally renowned speakers, and they are on topics that are very important to all of our law enforcement. So it's always a great takeaway, and we've continued to build on that year after year. I mean, again, topics this year, again, as you mentioned earlier, gangs, and we'll get into that in specifics. But again, the criminals are smart. We'll have one of our speakers actually do a 3D printer of a gun to see how these guns are made and how these criminals are putting those out on the street. We'll continue to talk about, our participation with 287G and what we're all doing together. And we also provide information where they get continuing education credits, too. So that's important for all of our law enforcement and our first responders and our prosecutors to have their education units provided as well. But I tell you, the greatest thing, and the commissioner and I talk about this a lot, when you bring this many people together, it's always a charge to each of them. It's about networking. You need to know each other. You need to trust each other. And then when we do these operations, you've met each other, you've spent a couple of days together, you pick up the phone and you say, hey, I've got an issue here, this sheriff can help there, or this police chief, bringing all of us in, our state, federal, local partners, because we've all met each other, you know each other, you trust each other, and that is a game changer in law enforcement for all of us.
100%. And I tell you, the other thing that we do after this is over, and we've done this the last 2 years, and we'll do it again this year, we send out surveys to the attendees, and we listen to them. And what did you enjoy? What did you find useful? What can we do more of? What can we do less of? And so we listen to the participants so that they're engaged, and when they come back next year, they see that we did listen, and we might have more time for this or that. And so that's been a big part of it. And we also recognize those that have gone above and beyond. Today we'll have our awards luncheon where we recognize the prosecutor of the year, the first responder of the year, the law enforcement officer of the year, the firefighter of the year. And so we recognize those in our state that have gone above and beyond at this as well. And so that awards presentation is always very touching when you hear about a law enforcement officer that might have done something that saved the lives of others and put himself at risk. And so, I think when we do those things, it makes it a very intriguing conference and one in which folks want to come back to. And again, our teams do such a great job, and then just trying to think of the issues that are on the forefront for public safety and make sure that those get talked about and addressed. I know yesterday we had somebody, a professor from Southern Miss came in and talked to us about recruiting and some of the issues that we face in the public safety sector, trying to get the next generation of first responders into these professions, and had some great insight. And I'm sure that everybody that attended that will go back and talk to their recruiting teams and saying, hey, these are some of the things that we need to do. I've got these notes. I have his contact, and he's willing to talk to us about ways we can improve recruiting for our public safety agencies.
And that is certainly key
Sean,
for us.
One of the things that, yeah. Well, one of the things that both of you have talked about is collaboration, right? Joint task force, multiple agencies working together. Law enforcement, and I don't know if this is just like in books or movies or it's actually real life, but there always have been these turf wars. You've got all these different acronyms, FBI, CIA, DEA, ATF, MBI, local sheriffs, local police department, and everybody's supposed to work together. But you've got this guy going, no, not in my county. This is going to be my investigation, or a state agency or a federal agency that steps in. I feel like we're seeing less of that. Well, is that accurate, one? And two, how have you gotten to the point where these groups are working well together?
Again, I go back to what Ronald Reagan said. If you're not worried about taking credit, there's no limit to what you can accomplish. And so
but a lot of people are worried about taking credit.
Well, they are, and that's not my style of leadership, and that's not the general style of leadership either. And so I think when you've got leaders who are more focused on the results and less about themselves, that's what you get. And so hopefully that'll stay that way with the future of the Department of Public Safety and the Attorney General's office. And we're here. We're going to leave our mark, and I think the reason why you're seeing the successes that you see is that that's our style of leadership, and we try to push that down to our folks. And I can tell you that there's buy-in. It took some time. When I first started going to the Chiefs Association and the Sheriff's Association, I got an earful about a lot of different things, and they didn't think I'd be back the next year, and I was. And it wasn't, it was because I was trying to bring down those walls and let them know that I'm here to help y'all. I want your communities to be safe because those are my communities. I live on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. I want those communities to be safe. Anything we can do from the Department of Public Safety standpoint to accomplish that, that's what I want. I have nieces and nephews at school at Oxford and Starkville, and I want those communities to be safe. Anything the chiefs up there need or the sheriffs in Tippah County need, we're going to be there to do it because I want them to be safe. And so, again, I know the general style of leadership in mine, we're not worried about that. Taking credit. There's enough credit to go around for everybody, and we're going to make everybody look good, and we're going to work together.
And the commissioner's right. We don't operate like that. It's about who did we protect today? How did we make our community safer? How do we engage all the different law enforcement across our state? And so that has been our number one goal. And as the commissioner said, we've worked very diligently, and the results are out there. When we do operations, when we have issues that come up, we both in our agencies try to provide all the resources, the tools that we can for all of our law enforcement, particularly if you're in a small area. What can you do? How can we help you? Forensics, whatever the case might be. And so we've really stepped into that, and we want to continue to be empowering to all of our law enforcement. We do have a number of task force, and we both are always asking, please participate. We need you in the fentanyl strike task force. We need you when we do an operation in your area. If it's a human trafficking issue, the commissioner and our teams have been very, very out there on participate on human trafficking task force, learn about it, get certified in that. So again, it's going to happen in your area, and if you're versed on it and you can participate, you're going to help save that individual, and you're going to help take down that predator. Cyber, we all know cyber is an issue. Every crime has a cyber element. We certainly all have the cyber fraud task force working together, asking them to come learn, be trained on cyber, because somehow, some way, you're going to have criminal elements in your communities that involve cyber. And then the commissioner mentioned it earlier, children, the child exploitation, the internet crimes against our children is unbelievable. And we have to all be ready. We have to be looking for that. We have to find those children. We have to rescue those children, and we have to stop that exploitation. And the only way we address any of these issues is that we do them together. We see that we work stronger, harder, and better when we work together.
Only a couple of minutes left. We do not have a major metropolitan area in Mississippi, and a lot of times we think about major metropolitan areas as hubs of gang activity, but we know that gang activity exists in the state of Mississippi. How prevalent is it? Where is it? Is it everywhere? Maybe is the bigger question.
It's in a lot of our communities, and it's not the gangs that you think of in the 90s, the Bloods, the Crips, and that kind of stuff. It's a lot of these smaller neighborhood gangs that you're seeing. We met with the, Director Icall for the FBI for the state of Mississippi, and he, one of the things that their intel is showing and that we knew is you have over 200 small gangs throughout Mississippi. These are neighborhood gangs, and they're loosely affiliated with other gangs, but it's not like it was back in the day where you had two major gangs that people were joining. These are small neighborhood gangs that a lot of times are made up of teenagers very young, who have been neglected for most of their life, and they're very dangerous. I was talking to a DA on the coast, and they said, if you're going to get robbed, you want to get robbed by a 40-year-old. He just wants to take your money. But these teenagers that have grown up in this world, they'll kill you and not think anything of it. And so it's very dangerous. And it's a very big problem that we can't just use law enforcement to get out of. There's a lot of social service issues that have to be addressed when we talk about these young offenders.
We're out of time. Do you guys have time to hang for one more segment, or do you need to go? I know the summit's starting in just a little while, so if you need to go, say so.
Yes, sir.
Sure.
I would love for us to dig just a little bit deeper on the gang conversation in Mississippi. Where is this coming from? These neighborhood gangs. Is it because of what they have seen and heard, or is it just something that's spawning organically, which seems unlikely? It's Mornings with Richard Cross. Sean Tindell, Lynn Fitch, Commissioner of Public Safety, and Attorney General are my guests. Back with you right after this. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk, Mississippi. I just wanted to drill down a little farther on this gang activity conversation, because what you were explaining a second ago, Commissioner Tindell, is honestly kind of new information to me, and I've got to believe that a lot of our listeners feel the same way. You said neighborhood gangs are the prevalent gang culture in Mississippi, and that you've identified as many as 200 of those across the state. Did I get that right?
That's right. And it's and again, these are street level gangs. These are neighborhood gangs, and they're young individuals that have fallen to this lifestyle. There was a recent video that was circulating on YouTube, and it was somebody that was doing documentaries, and it was covering different gangs across the country, but came to Mississippi and was in Jackson, but was also in one of the smaller communities in Mississippi where we had these gangs, and they affiliate, they run together, they commit crimes, and they're very dangerous. And there's, like I said, a lot of issues there that are going on. You've got generational separation where you don't have parents together, and these kids are growing up being raised not only by young mothers but young grandmothers, and so 30 or 40 years of some of these failed I think experiments that we've had that have broken down the family dynamic have resulted in a lot of these things. And so it's a very complicated issue that, again, I don't think we can just take law enforcement and use it as the only way to find ourselves out of this situation. We have to create environments where these young people see a better future, an opportunity for themselves to go on and do things that make them productive citizens. And so right now, they don't have that. And it's a very, very tough thing to do. And I don't think it's just something that we're dealing with in Mississippi. This is a nationwide issue that really needs to be addressed, but it certainly impacts us in this state when we look at gun violence. And all you have to do is look in the paper. You talked about Greenville. We talk about Jackson. Yeah. I mean, I see it in Gulfport. Multiple teenagers that are being affected by gun violence.
General Fitch, when one of the things that we've seen, and I mean, many of us have watched these shows, but on Netflix in particular, you've seen multiple series that kind of glorify the drug lords, what's the word I'm looking for? The cartels. Sorry, drug cartels. And kind of whether it's the Sinaloa cartel or what's going on in Colombia or South Florida in the late 70s and early 80s. And they kind of make that a sexy thing because you see the glamour and the money and everything that goes along with it. Is that part of what is encouraging some of what you're seeing in terms of local gang activity? Like there's this idea that it's fame and fortune and fast cars and big guns and all of that stuff without maybe really recognizing the human capital toll?
Oh, absolutely. It is a recruiting tool, and it does glorify that type of lifestyle. And you see these young teenagers say, oh, that's what I want to do. I want to have the guns. I want to have the money. I want to have the opportunity to, throw cash around, be big in my neighborhood. And it's a draw-in for them, unfortunately. And then, as the commissioner said, here in Mississippi, we have over 200 gangs, and so many of them, or the bulk of them, are the neighborhood gangs. So when you get these these young people, and now they see this fantasy that's been drawn in, like some of the documentaries, the shows, and they think, oh, we can do this too in our neighborhood gang, and so they are easily recruited. Unfortunately, the direction is not there by any parents or any guidance, and so they run at their pace that, again, puts them in predicaments, and then very quickly they're in the criminal element. And so then you see time and time again so many lives that are lost that should never have happened with these young people. And so for all of us, we really do have to take a holistic approach and say, how do we help these children? How do we change them back into the lifestyle where they are children, where they are getting direction and guidance, and bring everybody together? What do we do to help them in their school participation? So many of them give up on their schooling, and we lose them there because now they have a lot of free time and they're out there being leveraged in these gangs. Last year we had a bill that we all worked on to allow us to have harsher prosecutions for older gang members that recruited these young people, because they get them in and then they have all these different tasks that they must accomplish to be a true gang member. And you see the robberies, the car thefts, the murders, and that's all part of it. And we've got to stop that. We've got to get ahead of that here in our state and in our communities. But we do it again together as we look at where the areas of concern are. How do we bring people in? How do we bring different communities together? Because everybody has to be taking a part and has a role in stopping this.
And I think about my own agency, and like Colonel Charles Haynes, who grew up in Jackson and is very familiar with some of these different gangs, and then having somebody like that in a position as colonel of the Mississippi Highway Patrol, that they can see that there's a better life, there's a different life, and these are the paths that they have to take to get there. And I think the more shining examples that we have like that, and especially people that come from those neighborhoods that have gone and do good things, that they can reach back to these neighborhoods. I think it gives that light for these kids to find a different way, and I think it's a term they use, getting off the porch, and we need to make sure they stay on the porch, and if they get off the porch, they know they're going into that gang lifestyle, and so I think someone like Colonel Haynes and others that have, again, found success in business or found success in law enforcement or in government or other avenues can be the shining light for these kids, and they need it. Again, they're coming from some of the most neglected homes you could imagine.
And we do need to have the champions for these children, that they know that they can be successful. And so many times they're just looking for someone that believes in them and gives them hope and gives them that insight for a better pathway.
And look, if we wait till they're 13, we've waited too long. The ship has, I hate to say, sailed, but at that point, we've waited too long. These programs have to start early. In our juvenile justice system, there's a lot of improvement that we have to do. I was a prosecutor 20 years ago for the youth court in Harrison County. We had over 400 bed space for juvenile delinquents. We're down to about 40 across the state right now. And that's just not enough to house juvenile delinquents. Now, we have some local facilities, but they can only keep them for I think, up to 90 days in those facilities. And we've really got to address the juvenile delinquents that we have and what we do with the really, really bad ones, the ones that we're scared of.
And Sean, what you just said was kind of sobering to me. I don't think I'm naive. I mean, maybe I am, but I don't think I am. I've got a 12-year-old son. And in a lot of ways, even though he's growing up, he's still a little boy. And 12 is not 13. And he's 13 too late. That is a really scary thing for a lot of parents across the state of Mississippi to hear.
Sure, and it should be, and it is. And look, I've got a 17-year-old, 15-year-old, 14-year-old, and a 10-year-old. And my 14-year-olds are a lot different than some of these other 14-year-olds that have grown up a little harder. And so,
Sure.
Again, it's a reality, but it's something we've all got to work together to solve. And again, I go back to we're not going to just use law enforcement to get ourselves out of this.
And we have to continue to share best practices and look at different ways that different law enforcement, different groups are being successful. Sheriff Toggle in DeSoto County, he and his team have an amazing presence in the schools. And that's been a game changer to be in those schools, talking about the future for these children, giving them that hope, that excitement, that they can be whatever they would like to be and not be afraid or anticipating issues with law enforcement, but to see that law enforcement is there to help them, to empower them.
That's right. And Sheriff Tuggle's a great example of somebody that the power of inspiration that somebody like him can bring. And again, Colonel Haynes and others, we need more of that. And that's what these young individuals need to see. And we've got to get to them very young.
I thank you both for your time. The Public Safety Summit is happening in Central Mississippi. We've been visiting with Commissioner of the Department of Public Safety, Sean Tindell, and Attorney General Lynn Fitch. General Fitch, I feel like I have to ask you this on the way out the door. Your office announced yesterday that it was investigating allegations of votes being bought in Gulfport. Is there anything that you can tell us about that investigation?
Well, I cannot. The letter was pretty succinct. You know, it is an active investigation for us, Richard, but anytime those issues arise, we're certainly going to take a hard look at those.
All right. I thank you for that. Attorney General Lynn Fitch, Commissioner Sean Tindell from the Department of Public Safety, thank you so much, both, for your time. I wish for a great conference today and a lot of good to come from it.
Right.
Thank you. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Richard.
We will put a bow on this edition of Mornings with Richard Cross. I will say to you again, thank you for your patience. I know that we have had some technical issues and some distortion on my end a little bit. It's not because we didn't try and we didn't prepare, but sometimes that just happens the way it is. So thanks for bearing with us. We're going to wrap things up when we come back with you. Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk Mississippi. We're back to wrap it up right after this.